To where from where?
I was in,
Florida.
I
Back
was
in
in,
Florida.
I was in Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia,
Wow.
Hungary, England, Scotland.
Sounds like a fabulous trip.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
my Israeli friend says that the news greeting is Moadim L'Tikva. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm reminded, even though we're seeing lots of pictures of joy in Israel and in Gaza, actually, reminded that, hostages coming home is going to be a very poignant moment. We don't know who's alive, who's dead. We don't know what shape they're in. Sure. I feel like it's very common. And of course, we've been waiting for this. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. It is 8:47. Oh, and Sarah behind me in the room. So, how's the sound? How's that doing? It's not so good. Caroline, it's not so good. Carolyn, it's not so good.
Caroline, yeah. Here I could call Victor. Yeah.
A million friends who are Carolyn or Caroline. I never remember. I'm sorry.
You're
Caroline.
totally good. Don't worry. Here, I'll let Victor know. Yeah.
Sometimes it just fades a bit and it's not clear. You're very clear, and then suddenly you're not.
Is it better now? I moved my computer away a little bit.
Well, let's see.
Is it okay? Let's see. If it's not good, just put something in the chat, and Caroline will notice. Okay. All right. So let's say the bracha, the blessing over Torah. So we're in the last part of the Torah. Oh my God! We're ending the book. It's a big deal. It's a big bracha. It's called V'zot HaBracha. And this is the bracha. Hi. Hi, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. What's your name? Hi, Noah. Have a seat. Oh, hi, Con. You know each other. Oh, nice. You are. Blessing over Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, ruler of our world, who sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to soak in your revelation and wisdom. Okay. Good morning, Ben. Welcome, everybody. Lots of familiar people, some new people. Good to see you. Shabbat Shalom and Moadim L'Simcha. This magnificent holiday that celebrates fragility. And as I wrote recently, as we reckon with fragility, we're commanded to make it so beautiful. It is such an interesting moment in the Jewish calendar. Good morning, Paul. Good to see you. And with that, we are reading the last parsha of the Torah. We're ending Dvarim. We're ending Deuteronomy. So just to place us where we are in the Torah, remember, Deuteronomy, in a sense, is Moshe's magnum opus, right? He begins as a person who can't speak, and then there's a whole book in his voice. And we're going to look at some commentary about whether the last few verses of the Torah are in his voice or not. Debate about that. That's interesting. And we also end with this image of a mountain. We begin with Moshe at the burning bush, saying he doesn't have a voice, he can't speak, he's heavy of mouth, heavy of lips, uncircumcised lips. And we also end with mouth imagery, which is kind of stunning in terms of like literary parallels. So let's dive right in. We're going to be looking at the end of the Torah, and various themes embedded in the last passage. Start with a very special poem. So let's see if I can share my screen. Give me just a moment. This is good. Okay, the death of Moses. Hi, good morning. Shabbat Shalom. the death of Moses and the kiss of God. So we'll see in a moment, there's some question about whether the mouth of God means the kiss of God or by the instruction. So we can interpret it mystically or we can interpret it regularly, for lack of a better word, according to the shot, according to the contextual meaning of the word. Okay, so we're going to start with a poem by Rabbi Dr. Jill Hammer, who is a member of Romemu and an amazing teacher and Kohenet, priestess. So she writes. Oh, okay, thank you. We began redemption together on the banks of the Nile, weaving reeds, plots, baby clothes. Now we are the ones who finish the circle. We do the last work of the wilderness. He has seen the whole land, but we have seen the universe, how a teeny child can become a river, how a salt sea can turn to earth. We bury him in the valley in the land of Moab, where one day a mother and a daughter will come to love one another, and redemption will be born. We bury him in the shifting sands, in a shroud white as the moon, and no man knows his burial place until this day. So that's that last quote is a quote from the passage that we'll see at the end of the Torah. And it's such a beautiful meditation on the death of Moshe, but also another kind of vision, right? It's he has seen the whole land, but we have seen the universe. But who's the we here? So it seems like the we are the women who began redemption on the banks of the Nile, right? Beginning weaving. And I think maybe, right, so reeds for the basket, perhaps for Moshe's basket, or the reeds by the banks of the river. Baby clothes, interesting. Plots, maybe that's a reference to, and we can ask Rabbi Joel herself, which would be fun. Maybe she'll be here today. Plots may be another reference to the book of Ruth, which she references at the end, right? Plots of land. So it means that she's in the moment and also looking way forward to the book of Ruth and that moment of redemption. I think it's such a beautiful poem, how a tiny child can become a river, how a salt sea can turn to earth. And then looking forward, like she's really framing the story of Moshe between stories of women, right? The stories of women of Exodus and the story. So any comments about that? Any questions or comments? As Jill comes into the room. I don't think it's Jill. Any questions or comments about this? Anything else that you want to note? So I think she takes a moment of grief and like brings us to redemption, which is amazing because one could say that, you know, even though we're in a moment of celebration now as a people, we're also in a moment of grief. And you know, she takes the long view, which I think is a gift, like having that kind of perspective, right? We're not just in this moment, we're in a longer moment. We're going to actually talk about that later during services with some other texts. So, okay. Oh, Beth, you have a comment about the poem.
Shabbat Shalom. One thing, what I was struck by with the last line of the poem, no man knows his burial place until this day. Obviously, this means no one knows Moshe's burial place, but it could also mean no one knows his own burial place until this day. None of us know where we're buried. I mean, you know, you can buy a cemetery plot, but we don't know where we're buried.
Right. At best, you can know where you're going to be buried, maybe. But yes, absolutely. That's a beautiful reading. Thank you. Okay, so I like this for this moment. This next quote by Umberto Eco: "The author should die once he has finished writing, so as not to trouble the path of the text." So that feels like so apt for Moshe, right? You know, he dies, and now the Torah is our gift, right? It doesn't belong to Moshe. And in fact, there are beautiful midrashim, there are beautiful legends about how the Torah is interpreted by Rabbi Akiva in ways that Moshe doesn't even recognize. Like, what is he talking about? Right, he's in the back of Akiva. It's very famous in Midrash. He's in the back of Akiva's classroom, and he doesn't understand a word he says. Right? So the Torah goes much further, again, thinking about perspective, than what Moshe could imagine. Right? And our lives, one could say, or our texts or our words will be interpreted in ways that we can't imagine by historians 100 years from now. Like, what sense are they going to make of this era? I often wonder about that. What sense? And I want to know what sense they're going to make of it because I need to make sense of it now. So, okay, so now let's dive into the end of the Torah. Deuteronomy 34. This is text number 3. Okay. Vaya'al Moshe. So this is after his long blessing for the people of Israel, Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. And, you know, his death closes the Torah, more or less. We'll see in a minute how it unfolds. Vaya'al Moshe me'arvot Moab el har Nebo rosh hapiska asher al pnei Yericho. Yar'ehu Adonai kol haaretz et hagilad adan. And Moshe went up from the plains of Moab. And it's interesting, arvot, the word for plains, also plays with this word that we've seen in other accounts of his going up the mountain, which is to pass over, right? It's the same letters, but different arrangement. La'avor. And then it's, so Moshe went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo at the top of the Pisgah that faces Yericho, and Adonai let him see all the land, Gilad as far as Dan. And we also mentioned last week that Har Nebo could be, could represent nun for like negative, like not going, and vo coming in, right? Not coming in. So this is like his not coming in moment, but his seeing without entering. Okay, 2. Ve'et kol Naftali ve'et Eretz Ephraim u'Menashe ve'et kol Eretz Yehuda ad hayom ha'acharon. And all of Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Menashe and all the land of Yehuda as far as the hindmost sea. Oh, I said hayom, I'm sorry, ad hayam. Ve'et hanegev ve'et hakikar b'at Yericho ir hatmarim ad soar. And the Negev and the round plain, the cleft of Yericho, the towns of the palms as far as Soar. Okay. Vayomer Adonai elav. So God says to him, to Moshe, Zot ha'aretz asher nishpati l'Avraham Kov le'or, and this is the land that I promised or I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, saying, L'za'acha et nena. To your descendants I will give it. Look at it with your eyes. I'm sorry, no. I have let you see it with your eyes. I've shown it to you, but there you cannot cross. So again, that emphasis that we looked at last week, the sense of like, you know, this word v'shama and there. So there's a lot of there, but there you cannot go. We're going to see other emphasis on there in one of the midrashim that are coming up. Vayamat sham Moshe. So again, there, and Moshe died there, but not there. The servant of God, Eved Adonai, the Eretz Moab, in the land of Moab, al pi Adonai. So by the order of God, or with God's kiss, or with God's mouth. Like, what an amazing phrase, right? What an amazing concept that Moshe died at the mountain of God. So we're going to actually pause a little bit and stay with this concept, and then we'll come back to the rest of that passage. But first we're going to look at the Talmud, and then some other places in Moshe's life where the word mount is used. So it says in Baba Batra, the Babylonian Talmud tractate Baba Batra, The sages taught, Tanu Rabbanan, Shisha lo shalach bahen malach hamavet. There were 6 people over whom the angel of death had no sway. Probably meaning in their death.
Number
They didn't
5.
have a role in their death. The Eluhen, and who are they? Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. I love that they include Miriam. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Okay, so where do they derive this from? Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Dechtiv, Bahu, Bakol, Mikol, Kol. So it's written in each of their stories, these 3 words, in all, from all, and all. So those 3 occurrences means that they were, according to the rabbis, blessed with everything. That's how they derived that the angel of death did not have a role in their death. Then Moshe, how do they derive it from Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam? Dechtiv, as it was written, al pi Hashem, by the mouth of God. So both with Aaron and Moshe, it's written in their death by the mouth of God. But then they object, V'ha Miriam lo katiba, but wait a second, it wasn't written that Miriam died by the mouth of God, so what are you talking about? How can you make that argument? So we have Rabbi Elazar, who comes to the rescue and tells us, Miriam name b'nishikat meta. Miriam also died with a divine kiss. Da'ache, as it is written there in Miriam's death, the word sham. So there it's written there. And also sham for Moshe's death. So since we have the word with Miriam's death, sham, and Moshe's death, sham, that means, that same word there, that means they both died by a divine kiss. So they're doing this like fancy hermeneutics based on the principle that there is no extra word anywhere in the Torah, and also based on the fact that if this word appears here and this word appears here, it must mean the same thing, similar, must indicate the same thing. So again, it's a little fancy footwork. Okay, so then, but wait a second, but why didn't it say lo ne'emar ba'al pi Hashem? Well, why doesn't it say with Miriam in that case? Like, why is it just indicated by a hint? And the reason is shegnai hadavar lomar. In other words, it would be immodest for us to say that God kissed a woman and she died. And that,
Oh my God.
well, okay, they had to find a reason, and that's the reason they found. I know, it's a little retro.
It was an immaculate kiss.
It was an immaculate kiss. And let's just, with a little humility, realize that we can't even imagine the ways we're retro, and people will be laughing about us in a few years. Just saying. Inshallah, exactly, inshallah. Okay, so now, let's look at now for a minute the word P and see how it, P or pet, and see how it occurs in the life of Moses. So first, early on in Exodus 4, Moshe says, Vayomer Moshe Adonai to God, Bi Adonai lo ish dvarim anochi. Please God, I am not a man of words. Gam mitmol, gam mishoshon. Not yesterday and not the day before. Gam me'az, and not a long time ago either. So in other words, I'm essentially not a person of words. It's characterological. Dabercha el avdecha. I'm sorry. Sorry, I mistranslated it. And also not since you started speaking with me. Okay, why? Ki kevad pe uvad lashon. Because I am slow of speech or heavy of mouth, and also heavy of language am I. So that's Moshe's identity from the very beginning, right? And if we remember, Moshe starts with an act of violence, not with speaking. He strikes down the Egyptian. The next day, I think he speaks, but his first act is actually murder, which is kind of startling. I was listening to this podcast about the Buddha, and I was also thinking about the parallel between, I don't know if there's more parallels, Tony might be able to tell us, or other people, between Moshe and the Buddha in the sense that they both left the halls of power, became, humble leaders in different ways, and they both share insight over their lifetimes, right? What they Tony gave me a thumbs up. Okay, excellent. Okay, next. The Buddha left, well, Moshe did too. Moshe did too. It's complicated. We can do a whole session on that. Yeah, Moshe left seems to have disconnected from his wife and children, certainly according to the rabbis, but you can also make a literary case about that as well. We could do our own podcast, me and you, Thomas. Like, let's do it. You'd listen to that.
Maybe only 10 of the people.
Okay. Oh, Jay, you want to say something?
Yeah, before you leave that passage, since you played earlier with Ein Beirish, I'm really bad on Shorashim and all that stuff, but the poet in me wants to also read Keved Peh as Kavod Peh.
So it's interesting. I was thinking about that this morning when I was preparing for the session. It's certainly it's a shoresh. It's a root that's related, like heaviness and respect and honor.
Glory and honor.
Glory, exactly. So it could be, I was actually thinking this morning, Jay, so it's really interesting you brought it up, that Moshe's heaviness of mouth turns into glory of mouth, which is really a beautiful, thank you for bringing that up. It's a really beautiful association. So yes, midrashic, poetic kind of play when we look at sort of the sweep of Moshe's life and what unfolds. Okay. Now in Numbers, so this is where Miriam and Aaron speak behind Moshe's back and say critical things about him. I don't go into what. And God is incensed. And God says to Aaron and Miriam, Vayomer, Shem'u na dvarai. Listen now to my words. Or listen, please. It doesn't feel like such a gentle urging of them to listen. Listen now to my words. If there should be among you a prophet of Adonai, in a vision to him I make myself known. In a dream I speak with him. Lo chen avdi Moshe. But Moshe, my servant, is not in that category, in no uncertain terms. Ubechol beiti ne'emanhu. He is faithful in my entire house. Peh el peh, mouth to mouth, edaber bo. Mouth to mouth, I will speak to him, or I speak to him. Umar'eh, and in a vision, below the chidot, and not in riddles, not Adonai. And the form of Adonai, Yabit, the form of Adonai, or I guess the image of Adonai, he beholds. Umadua lo yuretem l'daber ba'avdi b'Moshe. And why weren't you scared to speak against my servant Moshe? So Moshe is an entirely different category than the run-of-the-mill prophet. Okay, but again, that emphasis on peh, that's what it's doing here.
What is the context for that excerpt?
The context is Aaron and Miriam speaking, criticizing Moshe behind his back, and seemingly being in competition with him, like wanting more of what Moshe has in terms of, I guess, what in their eyes at that moment was power. And God is furious that they would speak that way about Moshe.
And is speaking to them
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah. Directly to Aaron and Miriam, God is enraged. And God goes into a long diatribe about how Moshe's in a different category. Yes, Wendy.
I think it's interesting that God begins Adam's life.
Wait, is there a speaker near you?
That God begins Adam's life by blowing in with his mouth, and then God takes the life away with the same mouth.
Good. Yeah, that's a great association. Okay, can we pull this thing then? So now, I don't know Zohar's Aramaic, so I'm going to read this in English, unless someone else wants to read it fluidly. So the Zohar, the mystical text of our tradition, or one of the mystical texts, says about kisses. What are kisses? Cleaving of ruach, spirit, ruach, to spirit. Therefore, kissing is by mouth, for the mouth is the outlet and source of ruach, breath. So kisses are kissed with the mouth of love, and spirit clings to spirit, never parting from one another. Consequently, one whose soul departs by a kiss cleaves to another spirit, which never parts from him, this being called a kiss. So, Assembly of Israel said, this is a quote from Song of Songs, "Oh, that he would kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. To join spirit to spirit, one not parting from the other." So in other words, the way the rabbis and later the mystical tradition interprets the Song of Songs is as not as a erotic love story about a man and a woman, but as a spiritual love story between the people of Israel and God. So when the Song of Songs talks about kisses, they're talking about some kind of mystical union. Okay, so that's what's being referred to here. Okay, so that's, this prevalence of mouth in Moshe's life. And what is this final kiss? Right? Is it just Moshe was buried according to the instruction of God? And then we're going to ask in a minute, who buried Moshe? Like, what's that all about, right? We'll see that in a minute. Because who's God instructing? Right? It's a little confusing or curious. So I just wanted to show you, the significance of kissing, which we're going to come back to if we have time at the end. But now I want to go to some other issues, unless there are any comments about the mouth of God here. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. So we're in verse 6. I'm back now in source number 3. So now here's the mystery. Vayikbor oto bagai be'eretz Moab. He buried him. Who? Who buried him? In a valley in the land of Moab. So quickly, what are the possibilities? Who buried Moshe? Quick in the room. God. Joshua, nice. Okay, what about online? Any other? Put in the chat, quick. If there's any thoughts about this. Okay, so we have God, we have Moshe. Any other possibilities?
Joshua.
What?
We have God, we have Joshua.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I thought you said Moshe.
No. I said God. Oh, I did. I'm sorry. God, Moshe, Joshua, God. A servant who was with him. Okay, nice. So the other possibility, and maybe I let this slip, is that, Paul says words buried him. Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure how that works. Paul, you want to say he buried himself? So there's a position, and we'll see it in a minute, that he buried himself. Paul, what do you mean that we're anonymous? Good. I like that. And it's interesting that it would be kept anonymous, given that we also don't know his burial place. Like, there's a lot of anonymity around his death, right? Paul, what do you mean by he was buried by words? Can you unpack that? Because it sounds interesting and beautiful and mystical. I'm not sure exactly.
What do I mean? I think that the divine made a decision that Moshe could not lead further. Moshe led by his words, and he was denied, supposedly, admission into the land because of his deeds.
Yeah.
And God and the divine also decided that it would no longer have a direct relationship with another prophet in the land. So mouth to mouth, word to word was deemed by the divine to no longer be the operative leadership principle.
So you're almost saying that words are buried. Or the mouth-to-mouth relationship is buried.
But words are the transmission of knowledge up until this point. And beyond this point, it is not words that are the direct method of transmission of knowledge from the divine to its people. And so words were buried with Moshe, and perhaps the words themselves buried Moshe.
Okay, beautiful. And I think we're going to come to something related when we study during services later. Okay, so a couple of quick comments. And I want to go on. Okay, Connor.
So you said that they said that
Oh, sorry, can you move the mic closer to you, please? Thank you.
that was the last prophetic revelation, but there were other prophets after Moses. Can you elaborate on that?
Uh-oh. Okay. God speaks directly to Moshe, and then revelation is directly to the people. What we call the Ten Commandments, or some part of the Ten Commandments, is understood as, directly revealed to the people. And then the people say, oh, don't speak to us, God, anymore, because we're going to die. Like, we can't stand this direct revelation thing. So from that moment on, Moshe is the intermediary. But Moshe represents a kind of prophecy that is not actually mimicked by the prophets to follow in the books of the prophets. It's more indirect. It's through a vision. It's as God said, right? It's through riddles, it's through vision, it's through, hearing something, but it's not the intimacy that God had with Moshe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
It's a different form of
what
prophecy.
What about the prophets that came before?
Like who?
Well, like the patriarchs, for instance.
Well, that's a good question.
They all seem to have very lengthy conversations with God.
They do.
I mean, was it
They do.
basically up until this point.
Yes, I think it's
You're
up until.
chit-chatting, and
I
then
think it's
after Moses,
up
that's it.
until this point, but I also think Moshe was in a different category in terms of intimacy with God. He is actually the one, we're going to go to the ascetic question for a moment, that, he's got this wife and children, and then his father-in-law, Yitro, brings the wife and children after the Israelites leave Egypt. And then Moshe doesn't pay attention to them at all, like nothing. And in fact, the rabbis say that he divorced his wife at that moment. And there's other complexity around that. We're not going to get into it. But Moshe seemed, even from the biblical text, much more ascetic than Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he was at a different spiritual model category. Question?
Look, yeah, but not an appropriate time. I think we probably like to continue with the.
One more. Yeah.
Well, I thought asceticism was forbidden in Judaism.
More complicated than that. Okay. Much more complicated. In fact, there's an ascetic stream thread. You know what? Think of it as a minor chord in a musical piece. It's a minor chord. It's not a major chord. But there's definitely rabbinic texts about this, and I can send you some materials about this if you email me. So most times when people say, oh, Judaism says this, ain't true. More complicated than that. Whatever it is, most times. Idolatry is forbidden. I'll go along with that. Okay. Okay, so we're in 6.
Hey, Jay wanted to say something? Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, Jay wanted to say something, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Just very quickly on the only thing we know from the Pshat on who buried him is it was not an Ish. Since Lo Yodea Ish, no person knows where he's buried. So therefore, logically, it couldn't have been a person. Maybe it was an Isha or maybe it was a Malach, but it couldn't have been an Ish.
Very nice. So I didn't finish that verse, but that's brilliant. Okay, so Vayivor Oto Bagai Be'eretz Moab. So, and he buried him, whoever he is, in a valley in the land of Moab. Mul Beit Peor, opposite the house of Peor. V'lo yada ish et kurato, and no man knew where he was buried. Until this day. So that's a very good point, Jay. That only leaves two entities, God and Moshe. So no servant, no Joshua. Okay, logically at least. Moshe ben 120 shana b'moto, and Moshe was 120 years old at the time of his death. V'lo chahato, and his eyes did not weaken. Remember, Yitzchak's eyes weakened, although that verb isn't used, and also Leah was of weak eyes, and that verb was used, I believe. V'lo nas lecho, and his vigor did not abate. Now, I was wondering about this, and maybe Asher Chaim or someone else can help me with this. Is lecho kind of related to moistness? Asher Chaim? Someone else? Like his moistness, he didn't get all dried out, so to speak. All right, Asher Chaim, if you want to unmute, if anyone else knows anything about that word.
I'm just nodding. I think you're right on.
You're nodding. Excellent. I didn't see you nodding. Thank you. I like the Asher Chaim nod. Vayivku b'nei Israel Moshe, and b'nei Israel grieved for Moshe, which is interesting because they did not grieve for Miriam, or it's not written they grieved. There are votes Moab.
But they grieved for Aaron.
Yes, they grieved for Aaron, but not for correct. In the plains of Moab, Shloshim Yom, for 30 days. Vayitmu Yemei B'chi Evel Moshe, and the days for crying of Moshe or grieving Moshe, the days of grief were completed. Okay, so we don't end with that grief, which is interesting. We now move on to Yehoshua. So, it's interesting that the Torah kind of gives us a transitional figure, even after the death of Moshe, not leaving us with this just loss and grief. Yehoshua ben Nun maleh ruach chochma ki samach Moshe yadav alav. And Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom because Moshe placed his hands upon him. And Vayishma'u elav b'nei Israel, and the people of Israel listened to him. V'yasu kasher siba Adonai and Moshe, and they did as God instructed Moshe. And then we're back to Moshe in verse 10. V'lo kam, and this actually speaks to your question, V'lo kam navi od b'Yisrael, Moshe asher yida'o Adonai panim el panim, and never again did a prophet rise up in Israel like Moshe, right? Never again. This is a different category. Who God knew, who knew God, right? Who Adonai, who God knew face to face, right? Panim el panim. So again, there's that incredible intimacy, and there's all kinds of proof texts for that intimacy, and this is one of them. L'chol ha'otot ha'moftim asher shalacho Adonai la'asot be'eretz Mitzrayim l'Pharaoh u'l'chol avadav u'l'chol arts. In all the signs and portents that Adonai had sent to do in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land. L'chol hayad ha'chazaka l'chol ha'morah hagadol asher asa Moshe le'enei kol Yisrael. And all the strong hand and all the great awe-inspiring acts that Moshe did before the eyes of all of Israel. So it's interesting, we do end with Moshe, but we actually end with the eyes of the Israelites, the eyes of the children of Israel, which is so poignant to me and so moving, because remember, in the beginning, Moshe says, well, they're not going to listen to me. Right? And they don't listen to him. They have narrow spirits and they can't hear him. And the whole goal of Moshe and of God is to do something that actually communicated with the people. Right? And ultimately, Moshe was successful. Before all the eyes of Israel, they could take this in. Right? They understood it. They processed it. You know how when you're feeling really traumatized or besieged in some way or another, you can't take anything in. And these people who were slaves for 200 or 400 years, depending on who you ask, could not take anything in. And in fact, you could think about the whole wilderness experience as like, is trauma speaking to them or is God speaking to them? And and they often hear the trauma and not God's voice. Right? It gets in the way of faith. It gets in the way of knowing like, oh, the manna is coming. Oh, you have enough to eat. Oh, God's going to take care of you. Oh, you're going towards the promise. But they can't hear that because they hear the other narrative from their past of exploitation and, the all or nothing sort of paradigm in terms of power. They had no power. They acted like victims way after they needed to be victims, at least logically. But obviously they carried the same they carried the experience of their bodies. Okay, so I see a bunch of hands. About two, Ezra 2. Okay, great. So we're going to take a 5 to 6 minutes pause. And I think Jill, Rob, Meryl. Okay, let's be as concise as possible so we can do some more text before we get.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Great to see all of you. Yeah, I think my favorite part of the Torah is this part where Moses transitions to Joshua. And what I love about it is how God says, just be strong and of great courage. And then says, oh, by the way, just be strong and of great courage. And it keeps repeating. And I guess people who are better at Hebrew than I am will maybe get a more nuanced translation, but it seems like God's giving the same advice again and again, for Joshua to kind of take the mantle. And the way that I look at it is that when we don't have the kind of neon signs that the Jewish people had, way back, in the desert with protection at night and, from the cold and protection by the day with the clouds of glory, all of that with from the sun and the manna. And we enter the promised land and we just carry God inside of us without all of these neon signs. And we have to keep the faith without, without that. And I think that's kind of what, like what we've been living through since then. And it's a more personal, for me, it's a more personal God. It's not like a God that is always going to hit you over the head with a lesson or with a neon sign, but yet the same, if we keep strong and have great courage, we're going to experience the kind of faith that the people of Moses did. And I love that reminder and the switch off between Moses and Joshua.
Beautiful, yes. At these like profound moments of transition, which are so scary, be of courage and good faith are like amazing words. And, I often say that the Israelites, especially in the wilderness, suffer from the opposite experience of God than we do, right? For them, God was too much. For us, often God is too little. And I also wonder, like, what are more, and this is a whole conversation that we're not going to have right now, but what are more subtle signs? Not the manna, not the cloud, not the fire, not the thunder, not the lightning, right? But that could sort of help sustain us in our daily lives in this sort of tricky moment, treacherous.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's exactly what it does for me. And I think that's why it's my favorite part of the Torah. Yes.
Absolutely, Jill. That makes a lot
Thank
of
you,
sense.
Heather.
Rob and then Marilyn and yeah, good.
So for me, there are really three stories in the Torah. It's the Garden of Eden, which failed. Then it's the family of Abraham, and it failed at Sinai because something else was supposed to happen. And then,
Oh, you mean the shattering of the tablets? You mean the golden calf?
meaning,
What do you mean the failed at Sinai?
to me, it looked like the entire reason for the Jewish people to be brought out of Egypt was for something much, much bigger to happen. And it was going to happen at Sinai. They counted wrong. It was 49 days, and instead of 50, the golden calf happened, and the new plan.
It went south.
It went south.
Okay, all right.
And now they're in the desert, and there's a third plan, which is yet to reveal itself.
Oh, even now?
Correct.
The story is still being told. Ezra,
Yeah.
Ezra, just make sure you have a speaker. How's there sound issues or how's it going?
Yeah, the sound's coming a bit in and out. I have contacted Victor. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. If you need me to repeat something, just say so, or someone to repeat something. Okay.
I think, so last night I was with a minion that I helped coordinate.
Wait, say it louder.
I was at a minion that I helped coordinate.
Yeah.
And we focused on queerness in Judaism.
Uh-huh.
And I think that I'm really struck on this whole idea Moshe did not go into rigor mortis.
The Moshe did.
Didn't go into rigor mortis, and he was quote moist.
Uh-huh.
And the idea of what is a body and what is that transitional phase and how that consistently comes with you. And even this in the new transformation of the people, the way that the Hebrews were, this new transformation of people entering into this land, and the same idea of transit in a body, following with you and coming with you, but it's always there. It's always there in the past, and it's always present. So even if we don't know where he's buried, he is still with us, is the idea, is what I'm thinking of. But I don't know what the mystical, rabbinic teaching is on that, I guess.
But are you saying that because of the moistness image at the end of his life, that somehow his body stays alive? Is that what you're saying?
Mystically, yeah, that's
Mystically.
what I thought. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because
and that somehow he's still with us even in that physical sense.
Right, because I was thinking of the parallel between Miriam's well, following them around and the burst of the water, because I believe in the context is that someone poked him and then it burst with water. Is that why we believe that?
Wait, say it again?
I believe the context of the text is that someone poked him and he burst with water. Or moistness. Is the
I never heard that.
Oh, that's what we were talking about last night. I don't know.
Well, that's really interesting.
So I was thinking about that as the parallel to Miriam's well as well, and that following them throughout the wilderness.
So they're both in that sense associated with moistness.
Yeah.
And water.
Yeah.
He's associated with moistness from the beginning of his life because reads by the night.
And again,
right?
carrying through,
And then the water, so there's even water at the end of his life. Beautiful.
What does that have to do with queerness?
Okay,
or
so
you were just saying
Marilyn's been waiting,
Because of
and
transmission.
go ahead, Marilyn.
carrying the body with you.
Yes, I'm really struck, and I never noticed it before you pointed it out, that it ends with before the eyes of the children of Israel. And I was always, well, I think I've mentioned this several times, I always have had trouble with the punishment of Moses. And of course, he was punished because he struck the rock, and that Aaron was there too, before the eyes of the children of Israel. And it just seems so significant that this whole thing is before the eyes of the children of Israel. And then getting back to the that they don't see where he's buried. So it's almost like, and you know how it's supposed to be so important that that's why we have funerals, so we can see that the person is buried. And it's that's the one thing that they don't see. So anyways, I was just sort of struck by that, from the punishment to and it's the last words. So I really am going to start to think more about Moses's role. We think so much about his words, that his words were so significant, but it's something it's how he acted in front of the eyes of the children of Israel that was so significant. Anyways, like that.
Ends with the eyes of Israel. So that's interesting that they see the cloud at night and the fire by day. And it's sort of an image of faithfulness. They finally got the constancy, the object constancy of God. So the fact that, that they could process this again, it's that tension between what they went through, what's in the moment, is like the success of the 5 books, right? This is like success. Okay, Ben, you hang your hand up?
Yeah, I might as well.
You might as well.
I've been having a lot of thoughts.
Okay, but we need short, because Asha Chaim's also on deck, and we're gonna go back to the text.
Okay,
So
I'll go
we
for
need
short.
one
Yeah, I'll make one point. Yeah,
And you need a speaker though. Do you have a speaker?
I think this is a speaker.
Okay.
So I think just going on what we were talking about last week about Moshe being a liminal figure and how he's got 2 mothers and is representing Egyptian society and Israelite society, how he's got the high and the low, and is this person apart, right? I think this is, I think in a way, I think there's a similar duality between the words and the actions. And I'm trying to wrestle with this question of, when he hits the rock in front of the eyes of the people, that part of the problem there is he was supposed to speak, he was supposed to use words and not actions. And at the beginning of the life, like you said, he hit the person, right? He struck down the Egyptian instead of using words. And in between, you have this stream of words, right? You have all of the words that give rise to this story. And I think I'm trying to understand how the uniqueness of Moshe's relationship with God and his standing apart and his liminal status combines with these words to make something unique. And that the bookends are these actions where he loses the words.
You know what, I need to go on. There was a lot, Asha Chaim is waiting, and then we're gonna go on. I'm sorry about other people want to speak. Well, he loses, his life ends. He doesn't actually lose words. Like, that's a little different.
Well, it's sort of like to Paul's point. It's
Words or some,
there's an end to the words.
There's a certain end, there's an end to a certain kind of discourse.
Yeah.
Between human beings and God.
Yeah.
And for that, it's a moment of grief. And we'll also see later during services, we told there later. We're gonna pick up exactly this theme and look at the depth of this kind of discourse and the birth of another kind of discourse. Okay, Asha Chaim.
Yeah, just to push back gently against Ben, whose words I appreciate, it is Moshe's words that survive. And the failure to communicate, going back to what Marilyn said, is that the people are best taking in the visual. They see everything. In fact, even at Sinai, they see the thunder and the lightning. They believe their lying eyes. And Moshe has been trying desperately to tell them, Shema, stop believing your eyes. Lo taturu, don't follow your eyes the wrong way, but listen deeply. And in the end, le'enei kol Yisrael. There was no one like him in the eyes of all the people Israel, and it's for us to be, in later generations, the ears of all the people Israel, to keep Torah Moshe really alive. In the commentary, in the comments, Richard had posted earlier that the oral Torah is ascribed to Moshe as well as the written Torah, and that is a wonderful metonymy for the idea that it's the auditory, the oral tradition, the Shema Yisrael, that will be more durable than even black ink on white scroll or black fire on white fire. But I could ramble on forever. Dibarti, and thank you, Rav, for this wonderful session so far.
Welcome, so far. We'll see how it goes from now until the end.
Give yourself.
Take us out. Let's throw it on because Asha Chaim didn't say poo.
More greatness expected.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen, but beautiful. And again, this leads us to some themes that we're gonna discuss later. So thank you so much. And I love your introduction of, listening is crucial, especially in Deuteronomy. Okay, so now, who buried Moshe? And Jay, thank you for the corrective there about who the possibilities are. Vayikbar Oto. You know what, Ashachai, my voice is really getting tired. You want to read this? Number 4. Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted. You're on mute.
Vayigboroto, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Bichvodo. And he buried him, Rashi says, Rashi quotes, the Holy One, in God's essence. Rabbi Yishmael Omer Hu Kavar et Atmo. Rabbi Yishmael doesn't like that anthropomorphism and says he buried himself.
Good. Okay, let's stop there. So the idea of Moshe burying himself is some kind of perhaps, I don't know exactly, but there is certainly that idea in addition to the fact that God buried Moshe. And the idea of God burying Moshe actually relates to, is a model for what we do for one another, right? Like, you know, God did this for Moshe and we do this for one another. Okay, going now to the Gemara. We're not gonna look at the end of the Rashi. We're gonna continue with, wait. Well,
Five
sorry.
Batra.
Wait, we looked at the beginning.
No, we read that.
No, we looked at that. Sorry. We did this. And here, now we're going to look at Baba Batra.
Which number?
Number 7a.
Amar Mar, a master taught, Yoshua, Katav Sifro, Ushmona Psukim Shabbat Torah.
So here's the question, sorry, here's the question of like, so Moshe died, the book of Deuteronomy is in his voice, he wrote the whole Torah. Who wrote these final verses about Moshe's death if he died? Go ahead, sorry. I just want to give a little context.
First opinion, Joshua wrote his own book of Joshua and the 8 final verses of the Torah, Moshe's obituary. Tanya, Kimand Amar Shmona Pesukim Shabbat Torah Yehoshua Ketavan. This accords with the opinion that the last 8 verses of the Torah, Yoshua wrote them. Titanya Vayamot Sham Moshe Eved Hashem. Because it says Moshe died there. Efshar Moshe mate v'chatav. Could Moshe have died and then written the obituary Vayamot Sham Moshe? Ella, rather Ad Kan Katav Moshe. This far was written by Moshe. Mikan ve'elach Katav Yoshua. From here on was Joshua who did the writing. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Ve'amri le Rab Nachemya. And others say, well, that's really Rab Nachemya's opinion. Amar lo Rabbi Shimon, Efshar Sefer Torah Haser Ot Echat, Uchtiv Lakoch et Sefer HaTorah Hazeh. Rabbi Shimon says, is it possible for a Torah scroll to be missing even one letter, as in that would render it useless, and it's written, take this Sefer Torah, Ella Ad Kan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Umoshe Omer V'chotev. Rather, so far, it is the Holy One speaking and Moshe taking stenography. Mikan ve'elach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Umoshe Kotev Bidema. From here on, the Holy One is dictating and Moshe is writing through tears. K'moshe ne'emar lahalan, as stated later, Vayomer lahem Baruch, mipiv yikra elai et kol hadvarim ha'elle, v'ani kotev al sefer bidyo. Jeremiah, Baruch said to them, he dictated all these words to me and I wrote them with ink in the scroll.
Right, but that last word, Bidyo, where somehow is for the rabbis is a play on the word for tears. So that's why it's a proof text. That's my guess, at least. So here there's this image of, Moshe wrote the whole thing, but Moshe wrote these final verses in tears, right? Which is really amazing image. So that puts these final verses sort of sets them apart. And then Rashi picks up on that, but I want to look at Aviva Zornberg here, number 8. Mas, continue. number of this.
On the one hand, how can he record his own death? Who then wrote the words of Stargate? Like Huda declares, up to that point, Moses wrote the text. On that point, Joshua wrote the last 8 verses of the Torah. On the other hand, as Rabbi Shimeon protests, can we imagine the scroll of the Torah being short of 1 word? No. We must say that up to that point, God dictated and Moses repeated the words and wrote. And from that point, God dictated and Moses wrote in tears. The paradox is striking. The idea that the last 8 verses were written by Joshua provides a rational solution, but compromises the integrity of Moses' prophecy, 5 books of Moses. Rabbi Shimeon's view is that Moses writes of his own death, but without repeating the words with tears in his eyes. Moses' way of writing the last 8 verses, according to Rabbi Shimeon, is different from the writing process of the rest of the Torah. The image of Moses writing in tears conveys the impression of a Moses who acknowledges his own susceptibility, his sadness, and the complexity of his embodied condition, even as he writes in the apparent self-sufficiency of the past tense and the third person. Moses died there. His lips cannot frame the words, his body sheds tears.
Right. So that's an amazing image, right? To have like the great Moses writing of his own death right before he dies. No, imagine writing a story about your own death, how that would feel, or could feel. Like, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I don't understand the word that's missing. I mean, I understand they're saying that a Torah scroll can't be
I
complete
think what's
without.
going on in the Talmud, if you go up here in the Biva Zornberg, but I think what's going on in the Talmud is that earlier on, they refer to the whole scroll. And it's like, how could the whole scroll be referred to earlier on if this didn't happen yet? And I think the answer is that God dictated the whole thing in advance. That's what I think is going on. Ashkan, do you agree? From your
Yeah, that when Moshe gave the entire scroll to the people, he said, spoiler alert, don't read the last dozen verses yet. But that the scroll that Moshe gave to the people before his death had to include his obituary.
Because otherwise it would be
Incomplete.
An incomplete scroll.
Thank you, President.
Yeah, talking one more verse while we're talking about
Okay,
this.
quick.
I know. It's just irresistible. Deuteronomy 30.
Yeah.
Neither is it beyond the sea, another watery place, that thou should say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very nigh unto thee in thy mouth, that thou mayst do it.
Very close to you.
It's very close to you. But
That was my favorite verse to get tired of.
because I'm always trying to read your mind.
Yeah, well, you're successful. But tell me why you're bringing that up now.
Oh, I just think two thoughts, just
Yeah.
a radical proximity.
Oh, the close to the mouth thing.
Yeah, it's the mouth, right?
Right.
And also the juxtaposition of the sea and the mouth, the two most watery places in a way, the sea beyond, then the ocean within.
And the mouth of the sea.
And the mouth of the sea, right?
Yeah.
Like even the language makes the connection.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's about the sea inside. And Freud spoke of the oceanic feeling, the sense that inside of us is larger than the outside.
Right, and that oceanic feeling is connected to mystical union. This also relates to what Ajahn Chaim was saying, that what we're left with is what we hear, but also what we're left with is in the mouth.
Yeah.
Right, it's not only hearing the Torah, but also hearing each other and hearing God in one another's voices as sort of echoes of Sinai. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Yeah, and just this whole notion, it's like not beyond the sea. You actually don't need a rabbi to teach this to you. It's like, it's there for each of us.
It's
Right.
The sea is radically available, like
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
under your palm.
Yeah. Okay, podcast.
Podcast. That's the title.
Okay,
We have a question.
we need, Sarah, go ahead. Very quick, yeah.
I just wanted to say that thank you for this in a silly way. I've been very focused on the the phrase panim of panim, the
Face to face.
Yes, because what's been going around in my head is Esther panim, which is when God is in hiding in Esther, and what the Israelites at that point supposed to accept the Torah in a way that they couldn't at Revelation. And so like this is all connected too.
It absolutely is connected.
Is there also.
So Hester Panim, hiding God's face in Deuteronomy, is a meme for punishment of the Israelite people. And yet Hester Panim, hiding God's face, allows for human agency. So there's that tension and that balance. So, and yeah, Moshe is the one for whom, you know, this face to face. To go, I can't take donuts now, I can't take you, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's look briefly at Maimonides, I guess it's possible to look at it briefly. I think I'll read just part of it. Maimonides, Rambam says in the Guide to the Perplexed, which is written in Judeo-Arabic, the original here, is that, you know, as long as like we're young and the body or bodily sort of cravings and pleasures and impulses get in the way, that sort of blocks us from God. But once they recede, right, we're more connected to God. Here, the more the forces of one's body are weakened and the fire and passion quenched, in the same measure does one's intellect increase in strength and light, one's knowledge becomes pure, and one is the opposite of one's knowledge. Because for Rambam, everything is, for Maimonides, everything is knowledge of God. When this perfect person is stricken in age and near death, their knowledge will vitally increase, their joy in that knowledge was greater, their love for the object of their knowledge will intense, and it is in this great delight that the soul separates from God. To this state, our sages referred when in reference to the death of Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, because Maimonides also does not like anthropomorphism of God. So he's explaining this anthropomorphism. They said that at death was in these three cases nothing but a kiss. They say thus, we learn from the words, and Moshe the servant of the Lord died there in the land of Moab by the mouth of the Lord, that his death was a kiss. Okay, so then the same expression is here and there for Moshe and Aaron. The meaning of this thing is that the three died in the midst of the pleasure derived, the knowledge of God and their great offering. So there's some kind of intellectual sort of union with God in there. This kind of death which is in truth, this deliverance from death has been described by our sages to not but to Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. The other prophets of pious men are beneath the death. The grief of their knowledge of God is strengthened when death approaches. That's really interesting. The intellect of these people remain then constantly in the same condition. The obstacle is removed, that at times is intervened between the intellect and the object of its action, in the body and bodily cravings. It continues forever in that great delight, which is not like bodily pleasure. We explain this in our work, and others have explained it before us. Okay, so that's Maimonides' take on the kiss. And we're going to end as we started with a poem, a really beautiful but really sort of poignant poem. I'll read it in Hebrew. Moshe Rabbeinu ra'a rak pam achad et pnei ha'elohim v'shachach. Moses, our teacher, only once saw the face of God and forgot. If you look at ha'ar tamuvtachat, he didn't want to see the wilderness, and he didn't even want to see the promised land. Ela rak et pnei ha'elohim. But only the face of God. He hit the rock in the fury of his longings. He went up to Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and came down. He breathed, and he shattered the two tablets of the covenant. And he created a golden calf. Interesting that Amichai says that. And by the way, Amichai was the sort of like the national poet of Israel. Died, I forget, in 2001, 2002. Grew up Orthodox and then became like a secular but spiritual poet who really reached into the tradition for images where his poetry has to say. Well, he paced by Ashab, he looked in the fire and the smoke of Al Zachar, but he only remembered the hand of God, the strong hand of God and the outstretched arm, and not his face. They became like a person who wanted to remember their beloved's face, but could not. He did like a police sketch for himself, the Bnei Elohim, from the faith of God, Bnei Hasnet, and the Haboer, and the face of the burning bush, Bnei Bar Paro, and the face of the daughter of Pharaoh. Senor cannot make Allah was leaning over him in the basket. Shahayat snow something about him, the baby's basket, the ark, the hay feats. And Tatsuna and Bolshevik Israel and the whole body. And he distributed this picture in for all the tribes of Israel and all the wilderness about Ish Lo Ra'a, the Ish Lo Here, that no one saw, but a person did not see, a man did not see.